There is a conflict. I've talked to people who are second generation, very wealthy. Their parents made a ton of money and they had hugely successful businesses. And they say, there's not this coterie in San Francisco, for instance. This is probably true of other major metropolitan areas. These guys, and they were all guys at the time, who are now all deceased, would get together, and they'd make a lot of money, but they would also save a sports team, build a stadium, build a museum. And even in second generation, the sons and daughters are telling me, like, there's not that same sensibility in succeeding generations. Your great grandfather was an extraordinarily wealthy man. Your grandfather, extraordinarily successful. I mean, how do you feel? I know you mean you personally. I'm not going to ask you that, but in terms of, sort of the social capital that people who are substantially well off ought to be providing.
Well, you're largely right, in my opinion. I've been to a lot. I've had the privilege to sit on more than a few not-for-profit boards, and there's a movie that I've seen 3 or 4 times where there's a new executive director, typically from someplace back east, who says, hey, we're right here on the edge of Silicon Valley. If we can tap into the wealth that's down there, my problems are solved. And often what happens is nothing. And the organization finds that its true donors are these older people, older families. Sometimes blue-haired old ladies will write checks 100 times bigger than somebody who's 100 times wealthier than they are. So I do think it is an open question to what degree Silicon Valley is going to step forward and play the role that their predecessors played. It's starting to happen. I see the names of some of these younger people now showing up on not-for-profit boards, and I think they're there out of interest as well as generosity. So the jury's out. But for the last decade, they've had deep pockets and short arms. But I do think there are people, whether it's Bezos or Marisa Mayer or other people who really, Eric Schmidt, who really do care about these things. I don't know exactly what they're all doing, but I sense that their interest is genuine and their desire to make a difference is genuine in this sort of famine that we're experiencing, because it used to be, as you pointed out earlier today, that there were hundreds of organizations reporting from foreign capitals, and the number of news organizations that had Washington bureaus was in the dozens.
Right.
Now it's very, very different. A lot of television news is B-roll shot by freelancers. A lot of the commentary is 2 experts, not 2 newsmakers. There's not much anymore that isn't in this sort of opinion format. So if that's your source of news, you have to be aware that you're getting very digested. And so what typically happens is you say, well, I'm conservative, so I'm just going to listen to Fox because that talks to me the way I think the world works. And if you're progressive, then you say, well, I'm going to listen to MSNBC and Rachel Maddow because that seems to me the way the world works, and I'm just not even going to tune in Fox.
All right, so are we getting to the point where...
But that's not news.
Where billionaires, very wealthy people, are the sort of saviors in this time period before we discover what is the business model that involves original content?
Well, there's always been wealthy people that have a cause that they're promoting, right? You have the Koch brothers doing one thing, and we have Tom Steyer starting his own green fund. I mean, they will disseminate information, but those aren't news organizations. Those are public advocacy groups like the Sierra Club or the Heritage Foundation.
Right, but you have
they disseminate news, they do reports, they hire people, but it's very much slanted to the House opinion.
It's sponsored content.
It's sponsored content, okay.
All right.